Sometimes the people who promise to love you forever are the first ones to abandon you when you need them most. This is the story of Leila Richards, a 24-year-old woman who discovered that betrayal can come wrapped in wedding vows and sealed with empty promises. But sometimes life has a way of evening the score in ways you never could have imagined.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
Leila Richards had always believed in fairy tales, even at 24. Maybe it was because she'd grown up without them, raised by her stern grandmother Elena after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Elena Richards had been a woman of few words but strong principles, running the family's modest accounting firm in downtown Portland with an iron fist and a heart that, while rarely shown, beat fiercely for her granddaughter. "Love will find you when you least expect it," Elena used to say, usually while reviewing financial statements late into the evening. "But when it does, make sure it's the real thing, not just someone looking for a free ride." Leila thought she'd found the real thing in Marcus Wellington. They'd met at a coffee shop near Portland State University where Leila was finishing her degree in business administration. Marcus was older, 32 to her 22 at the time, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that made heads turn. He wore expensive suits, drove a gleaming BMW, and talked about his investment consulting business with the swagger of someone who'd conquered the world. "You're different from other girls," he'd told her on their third date, his hand covering hers across the candlelit table at Le Bernardin, one of Portland's most expensive restaurants. "You're not just after what I can give you. You actually listen when I talk about my dreams." Leila had melted. After years of feeling invisible, the quiet girl who'd lost her parents, the granddaughter who spent weekends helping with bookkeeping instead of partying, Marcus made her feel seen, special, chosen. What she didn't know then was that Marcus Wellington was a master at reading people, particularly young women who carried invisible wounds. He'd spotted her vulnerability from across that crowded coffee shop like a shark sensing blood in the water. Their whirlwind romance lasted 8 months before Marcus proposed. The ring was stunning, a 3-carat diamond that caught light like captured starfire. Leila said yes without hesitation, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Elena had been less enthusiastic. "Something's not right about that boy," she'd muttered, adjusting her reading glasses as she scrutinized the engagement photos. "His eyes don't smile when his mouth does." "Grandma, you're being paranoid," Leila had laughed, twirling around their small living room above the accounting office. "He loves me. He proposed. Look at this ring." Elena had looked, all right. She'd looked with the calculating gaze of a woman who'd spent 50 years reading people's financial situations and learning to spot trouble before it arrived. The wedding was everything Leila had dreamed of, a small but elegant ceremony at the Rose Garden in Washington Park, followed by a reception at the historic Multnomah Athletic Club. Marcus had insisted on paying for everything, waving away Leila's concerns about the cost. "Baby, let me handle this," he'd said, kissing her forehead. "This is our special day. Money is no object when it comes to making you happy." Elena had watched from the front row, her expression unreadable. During the father-daughter dance, which Marcus had awkwardly shared with Leila since her father wasn't there to claim it, Elena had caught her granddaughter's eye and forced a smile. But Leila caught the worry lurking beneath it. The first year of marriage had been a dream. They'd moved into Marcus's upscale apartment in the Pearl District with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Leila had graduated and started working at a small marketing firm, while Marcus continued his consulting work, though Leila noticed he spent a lot of time at home during business hours, talking on the phone and working on his laptop. "The beauty of consulting is flexibility," he explained when she'd asked. "I work with clients all over the world. Different time zones mean different schedules."
Leila accepted this explanation along with many others. She accepted that Marcus needed to travel frequently for client meetings. She accepted that his income seemed to fluctuate wildly from month to month. She accepted that he was vague about the specifics of his business, claiming client confidentiality whenever she pressed for details. What she didn't accept, what she couldn't possibly prepared for, was what would happen 15 months into their marriage when she discovered she was pregnant. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines on a Tuesday morning in March. She stared at it for a full minute, her hands trembling. She and Marcus had talked about children, of course, but always in abstract terms, someday, and when we're more settled. But as the reality sunk in, Leila felt a surge of unexpected joy. She pictured Marcus's face when she told him, imagined him sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around their apartment. She pictured family dinners, birthday parties, teaching their child to ride a bike in the same park where they'd gotten married. She spent the entire day planning how to tell him. She bought his favorite takeout from the Thai restaurant down the street, opened a bottle of his preferred wine, pouring herself sparkling cider, and waited for him to come home from his latest business trip to Seattle. Marcus walked through the door at 8:30, looking tired and checking his phone. He barely looked up when she greeted him. "Hey, babe, good trip?" she asked, nerves making her voice higher than usual. "Fine," he muttered, loosening his tie. "Just the usual client drama. You know how it is." She didn't actually, but she nodded anyway. "I made dinner, that pad thai you like from Bangkok Garden." "Great, I'm starving." He finally looked at her, and she saw something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Stress, maybe? Or irritation? They ate mostly in silence, Marcus scrolling through his phone between bites. Leila kept waiting for the right moment, but it never seemed to come. Finally, as he pushed back from the table, she took a deep breath. "Marcus, I have something to tell you." He glanced up, eyebrows raised. "Yeah, what's up?" The words tumbled out in a rush. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed felt like it lasted hours, though it was probably only seconds. Marcus's expression went through several changes. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been panic, before settling into a carefully neutral mask. "Pregnant," he repeated slowly. Are you sure?" "I took 3 tests. They were all positive." Leila reached across the table for his hand, but he pulled back slightly, running his fingers through his hair instead. "Wow, this is unexpected." That wasn't exactly the reaction she'd been hoping for, but she pressed on. "I know it's sooner than we planned, but Marcus, I'm so happy. We're going to be a family, a real family." Something flickered across his face at those words, real family, but it was gone so quickly she almost missed it. "Right," he said. "A family. That's great, Leila. Really." But even as he said the words, Leila could see him retreating, pulling away from her, both literally and emotionally. He stood up from the table, pacing to the window that overlooked the river. "We'll need to think about this," he said, his back to her. "There's a lot to consider. Timing, finances, living space." "What's to think about?" Leila asked, confusion creeping into her voice. "We're married. We love each other. We'll figure out the rest." Marcus turned around, and for just a moment his mask slipped. Leila saw something cold in his eyes, calculating. But then he smiled, that charming smile that had first won her over, and crossed back to her, pulling her into his arms. "You're right, baby. Of course you're right. I'm just surprised, that's all. This changes everything, doesn't it?" Leila nodded against his chest, relief flooding through her. "Everything," she agreed. She had no idea how true those words would prove to be. Over the next few months, Marcus's behavior became increasingly erratic. Some days he was the attentive husband and father-to-be, accompanying her to doctor's appointments and enthusiastically discussing baby names.
Other days he was distant and distracted, disappearing for hours at a time and claiming he needed space to think. Elena noticed the change immediately. "That boy's getting cold feet," she observed during one of their weekly dinners at the small restaurant down the street from the accounting office. Leila was 6 months pregnant by then, her belly finally starting to show. "He's just adjusting," Leila defended, though she'd been wondering the same thing herself. "This is a big change for both of us." Elena studied her granddaughter's face with the same intensity she brought to examining financial statements. "Leila, honey, I want to talk to you about something important. If this is about Marcus again, it's about your future, yours and the baby's. I've been doing some thinking, and there are some things you need to know about your inheritance." "What inheritance?" "Grandma, I don't have to worry about—" "I'm not just talking about the accounting business, child. There are things about your parents' estate, about what they left behind that we've never discussed. You were too young before, and then, well, I wanted to wait until you were settled. But now, with the baby coming—" Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope, setting it on the table between them. "What is this?" asked Leila. "Insurance policies, investment accounts, real estate holdings. Your parents were very successful before they died, Leila. More successful than I ever let on. I've been managing everything through the business, keeping it quiet, letting it grow. But it's all yours. Has been since you turned 21, legally speaking. I wanted to make sure you were ready for it and smart enough to protect it." That conversation had taken place on a Thursday evening in late September. By Sunday, everything in Leila's world would be shattered, and her real journey would finally begin.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
The weight of Elena's revelations sat heavy in Leila's chest as she drove home that Thursday night. $3.3 million. The number kept cycling through her mind like a broken record. She'd been living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about maternity leave and baby expenses, while sitting on a fortune she never knew existed. Marcus was already asleep when she slipped into bed, clutching the manila envelope to her chest. She stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how to tell him. Part of her was excited. This changed everything for their little family. They could buy a house, set up college funds. Maybe Marcus could finally relax about his inconsistent consulting income. But another part of her, the part that sounded suspiciously like Elena, whispered warnings in the darkness. The next morning, Marcus was up early, already dressed and checking his phone when Leila emerged from the bedroom. "Morning trip?" she asked, noticing his overnight bag by the door. "Portland to San Francisco, then back Sunday night. Big client presentation. Could be the breakthrough I've been waiting for." This was her chance. Leila took a deep breath, her hand instinctively moving to her growing belly. "Marcus, before you go, I need to tell you something important about our finances." That got his attention. He looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised, with that expression she'd learned meant he was calculating something. "What about finances? Did you get that promotion?" "No, it's not about my job. It's about—" She held up the envelope. "My inheritance." Marcus went very still. "What inheritance?" Leila explained everything. Her parents' success, Elena's careful management, the investments that had been growing for 16 years. With each detail, she watched Marcus's face transform. His initial confusion gave way to sharp interest, then something that looked almost hungry. "Wait, let me get this straight. You're telling me you've been sitting on over $3 million this whole time?" "I didn't know," Leila said quickly. "Grandma was protecting it, making sure I was ready." "Ready? Leila, you've been struggling to pay rent on this place. I've been busting my ass trying to build my business, and you've had millions just sitting in some account?"
The accusation in his tone caught her off guard. I told you, I didn't know. Elena wanted to control you. Can't you see that? She's been manipulating you, keeping you dependent on her. Leila felt a flash of anger. She raised me. She took care of me when no one else would. And now she's still treating you like a child. Marcus began pacing, his earlier excitement morphing into agitation. This is unbelievable. Do you have any idea what we could have done with that money? What I could have built? Something cold settled in Leila's stomach. What you could have built. Marcus stopped pacing, seeming to realize what he'd said. His expression shifted, the charm sliding back into place, like a mask. What we could have built, baby, together. I'm shocked, that's all. This changes everything. I thought you'd be happy, Leila said quietly. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his, but his touch felt different now, calculating rather than comforting. I am happy, Leila. This is amazing news. It's just a lot to process. The baby will be secure now. We can buy a house, maybe start a college fund. Absolutely, Marcus agreed, but his eyes were distant, already planning. We'll need to be smart about this, though. Make some investments, diversify the portfolio. I know some people who could help us turn this into something really significant. Warning bells chimed in Leila's head. The money is already invested. Elena's been managing it through the business. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your grandmother is an accountant for small businesses, not a wealth manager. No offense, but she's probably been way too conservative with investments this size. We could be making so much more. Before Leila could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed. Shit, I need to get to the airport. But Leila, this is incredible news. We'll talk more when I get back, okay? Maybe we can meet with some financial advisors, get this money working properly for us.
He kissed her quickly and was gone, leaving Leila alone with her doubts. The weekend crawled by. Marcus texted sporadically, updates about his flight, a photo from his hotel, brief responses to her messages about doctor appointments and baby preparations. But something felt different in his communications, distant and distracted. On Sunday afternoon, Leila decided to visit Elena. She found her grandmother in the office, working through a stack of client files, despite it being the weekend. How did he take the news? Elena asked without preamble, not looking up from her calculations. He was surprised. Excited, I think. But Leila sank into the chair across from Elena's desk. He kept talking about what we could do with the money, but it felt like he was really thinking about what he could do with it. Elena finally looked up, her gray eyes sharp behind her reading glasses. And what did he suggest? New investments, financial advisors. He said you'd been too conservative. Elena was quiet for a long moment, then opened her desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. I need to show you something, Leila. Something I discovered about your husband. The folder contained printed emails, bank statements, and what looked like legal documents. Elena spread them across her desk like playing cards. I hired a private investigator, Elena said simply. You what? She stared at her grandmother in shock. After you told me about the pregnancy, I could see Marcus changing, getting more anxious, more secretive, so I had him looked into. Elena pointed to the first document. Your husband isn't a consultant, Leila. He's unemployed. Has been for 8 months. The room seemed to tilt. That's impossible. He travels for work. He has client calls. Those business trips. He's been visiting a woman named Jennifer Moss in Seattle. They've been together for 3 years, since before he met you. Leila's vision blurred. She grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. There's more, Elena continued, her voice gentle but relentless. Marcus has significant debts, credit cards, personal loans, gambling losses. He's been using your joint account to make minimum payments, but he's in deep, about $60,000 deep. The paper swam before Leila's eyes, bank statements showing cash advances, credit reports with Marcus's name, Photos of him with a blonde woman outside a restaurant in Seattle. I don't understand. Why would he marry me if he was with someone else? Elena leaned forward, taking her granddaughter's hands. Because you were young, naive, and he thought you were poor. The perfect cover for his lifestyle. But now I'm worth millions, Leila finished, the full picture crystallizing with sickening clarity. Now you're the solution to all his problems. And with a baby coming, you'll be tied to him forever. Or so he thinks. Leila's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Landing soon. Can't wait to see you and talk about our future. This is going to change everything for us. She stared at the message, seeing it now through completely different eyes. Every word felt like a lie, every emoji a manipulation. What do I do? She asked Elena, her voice barely audible. You protect yourself and your baby, Elena said firmly. And you start by not telling him you know the truth. Not yet. We need a plan first. As if summoned by her words, Leila felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, her hand flying to her belly. Leila, what's wrong? Another pain, sharper this time. Something's not right. The baby! Elena was already reaching for her keys. We're going to the hospital. Now. Neither of them could have predicted what was about to happen next, or how completely it would reveal Marcus's true character. But as Elena helped her granddaughter to the car, one thing was crystal clear. The awakening was just beginning.
The emergency room at Portland General was a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. Leila gripped Elena's hand as another contraction seized her body, this one stronger than the last. At 7 months pregnant, this was not supposed to be happening. Mrs. Wellington, a young doctor with kind eyes, approached their curtained area. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. We're going to run some tests, but first I need to ask, where is your husband? He's flying back from San Francisco, Leila managed between breaths. Should be landing any minute. Elena squeezed her hand tighter but said nothing. They both knew Marcus's phone had gone straight to voicemail when they'd tried calling from the car. The next hour passed in a haze of blood pressure cuffs, fetal monitors, and increasingly concerned medical discussions just outside her hearing range. Elena never left her side, even when the nurses suggested she wait in the family area. I'm not going anywhere, Elena told them firmly. This girl is all the family I have. Finally, Dr. Chen returned with results. The good news is that while you're having contractions, your cervix isn't dilating. We think it's stress-induced preterm labor. We can stop it with medication and bed rest. But Leila, I have to ask, is there anything going on at home that might be causing unusual stress? Leila's eyes met Elena's. Everything was causing stress. Some family issues, Leila said carefully. Dr. Chen nodded knowingly. Pregnancy can bring out complications in relationships. The important thing now is keeping you and the baby safe. I'm going to give you medication to stop the contractions and keep you here overnight for observation. As the IV drip began working its magic, Leila felt the tight bands around her belly gradually relax, but the tension in her mind only intensified. Marcus still hadn't called back. We need to talk, Elena said quietly, pulling a chair close to the bedside, about what happens next. I can't think about that right now, Leila whispered. I just want the baby to be okay. The baby will be okay, Elena said with fierce certainty. But honey, you need to understand something. That man you married, he's going to come back tomorrow expecting to take control of your inheritance. And he's going to use this pregnancy, use your vulnerability to manipulate you into giving him access to everything. Leila closed her eyes. She knew Elena was right, but the truth felt too enormous to face. I can't prove he's cheating based on photographs. And even if I could, that doesn't mean I can just leave him. We're married. We're having a baby. You can leave him, Elena said quietly. But first, we need to protect your assets. Tomorrow, when you're feeling better, we're going to my lawyer. We're going to set up a trust that puts your inheritance completely beyond Marcus's reach. Won't that look suspicious? Elena's smile was sharp. Not if we do it right. Generational wealth protection is smart financial planning. Happens all the time. The only person who would object was someone who had ulterior motives for accessing the money. At 11 p.m., Marcus finally burst through the hospital room door, his hair disheveled and his tie askew. He looked genuinely panicked, and for a moment, Leila felt a flicker of hope that maybe Elena was wrong about him. "Baby, I'm so sorry," he said, rushing to her bedside. "My phone died on the plane, and then there was this huge delay," and he stopped, noticing Elena sitting in the corner. "Oh, hello, Elena." "Marcus." Elena's voice could have frozen water. "What happened? Is the baby okay?" Marcus took Leila's hand, and she hated how comforting his touch still felt, even knowing what she now knew. "Stress-induced contractions," Leila explained. "They've stopped them, but I have to stay overnight." "Stress?" Marcus frowned, his concern appearing genuine. "What kind of stress? You seemed fine when I left." Leila felt Elena's eyes on her, waiting to see what she would say. This was the moment. She could confront him with everything Elena had discovered. She could demand the truth about Seattle, about his debts, about the lies. Instead, she heard herself saying, "Just pregnancy stress, normal stuff." Elena's expression didn't change, but Leila felt her disappointment like a physical weight. Marcus stayed until visiting hours ended, holding Leila's hand and whispering reassurances about their future. Once he was gone, Elena moved back to the bedside chair. "Why didn't you tell him?" Elena asked. "Because I need to be sure, and because I need to do this right, for the baby." Elena nodded slowly. "Then we do this smart. No emotional confrontations, no dramatic scenes. We protect what's yours first, then we deal with him." The next morning, Dr. Chen cleared Leila to go home with strict instructions for bed rest. Marcus had returned early with flowers and her favorite breakfast from the cafe near their apartment, a gesture that would have melted her heart a week ago, but now felt calculated. "I've been thinking," he said as they rode home in a taxi, "about what you told me Friday, the inheritance." "Here it comes," Leila thought. "I think we should move quickly to consolidate everything, get it out of your grandmother's hands and into proper investment vehicles. I've already made some calls to a few financial advisors I know in Seattle."
Seattle, of course. I'm supposed to be on bed rest, Leila said carefully. Maybe we should wait until after the baby comes. But that's exactly why we can't wait, Marcus insisted, his enthusiasm building. We need to set up college funds, trust accounts for the baby's future. This kind of financial planning takes time to implement properly. Leila nodded as if considering his words, but inside she was making calculations of her own. "You're probably right. Maybe I should talk to Elena first, get all the paperwork organized." Something flickered across Marcus's face. "I don't think we need to involve Elena. She's done a good job as caretaker, but this is our money now, our family. We should make these decisions together." The possessiveness in his voice made Leila's skin crawl. Our money, as if he'd had anything to do with earning it. "Of course," she agreed, "but I'll still need the account numbers, transfer documents, that kind of thing. Elena has all of that." Marcus relaxed, apparently satisfied that he'd made his point. "Right, just let's move on this quickly, okay? I have some opportunities that are time-sensitive." That afternoon, while Marcus was out getting groceries, Leila called Elena from their landline. "I need to see the lawyer today," she said without preamble. "Are you sure you're up for it? The doctor said bed rest." "I'm sure. And Elena, I need you to do something else. I need you to find out everything about those opportunities Marcus mentioned. Who he's been talking to in Seattle, what kind of investments he has in mind, everything." There was a pause. "That's going to take some real investigating." "Then hire more investigators. Use my money if you have to. But I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any permanent decisions." "What changed your mind?" Leila looked around the apartment she'd shared with Marcus for over a year, seeing it now with different eyes. The expensive furniture they couldn't afford, the designer clothes in his closet, the lifestyle that never quite matched his claimed income. "He's already spending my money in his head," she said, "and he wants Elena out of the picture entirely. That tells me everything I need to know about his priorities." "I'll set up the trust paperwork today," Elena said. "And Leila, I'm proud of you. This takes courage." As Leila hung up the phone, she felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she was taking control of her own life instead of just responding to what other people wanted from her. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. "Mama's going to make sure of that." Outside, she heard Marcus's key in the lock. Time to put on her best performance. The real test was about to begin.
The law office of Brennan and Associates occupied the top floor of a historic brick building in downtown Portland, with windows that offered sweeping views of the Willamette River. Leila sat across from Patricia Brennan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had been handling Elena's business affairs for over a decade. "What you're requesting is absolutely doable," Patricia said, reviewing the documents Elena had prepared. "An irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary, managed by Elena as trustee until the child reaches majority. Very standard for inherited wealth protection." "And my husband wouldn't have any claim to it?" Leila asked, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "None whatsoever. Oregon is not a community property state, and since this is inherited money predating your marriage, it remains separate property. The trust structure makes it completely untouchable in any divorce proceedings." Divorce. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Leila hadn't consciously been thinking that far ahead, but hearing it spoken aloud made something crystallize in her mind. "How long does the setup take?" Elena asked. "With the documentation you've provided, I can have everything filed by end of business today. The money will be transferred into the trust accounts by tomorrow morning." 3 hours later, walking slowly back to Elena's car due to her bed rest restrictions, Leila felt a mixture of relief and terror. In less than 24 hours, Marcus would wake up to discover that the $3 million he'd been mentally spending was completely beyond his reach. "He's going to know something's up," Leila said, as Elena helped her into the passenger seat. "Let him know," Elena replied grimly. "By then, it'll be too late for him to do anything about it legally, and we'll have more information about his real plans." The information came faster than either of them expected. Elena's phone rang as they pulled into the parking space behind the accounting office. "Mrs. Richards? This is Detective Ray Morrison with Seattle PD. You hired an investigator to look into a Marcus Wellington?" Elena put the phone on speaker. "Yes, that's correct." "Well, you might want to sit down for this. Mr. Wellington is wanted for questioning in connection with a fraud case up here. 3 elderly investors lost their life savings to a Ponzi scheme he was running through a fake investment company. We've been trying to locate him for 6 months." Leila felt the blood drained from her face. "Fraud? That's not even the worst part," Detective Morrison continued. "The woman he's been staying with, Jennifer Moss, she's not his girlfriend, she's his business partner. And according to our investigation, they've done this before, at least twice. They target vulnerable women with assets, one of them marries the mark, and they systematically drain their accounts before disappearing." Elena's knuckles were white as she gripped the steering wheel. "Are you telling me my granddaughter is married to a professional con artist?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you. We've been building a case, but we needed to find him first. If he's in Portland, we'd like to coordinate with local authorities to bring him in." Leila's world tilted sideways. Everything, their meeting, their courtship, their marriage, was an elaborate setup. She'd never had a chance. "There's something else," Detective Morrison added. "The investment opportunities he's probably talking about, they're planning to use your granddaughter's money to pay back some of the Seattle victims and buy themselves time to disappear again. We intercepted communications between Wellington and Moss, discussing a $3 million solution to their legal problems." After they hung up, Elena and Leila sat in the car in stunned silence. Finally, Elena spoke. "We're calling the Portland police tonight." "No," Leila said.
What do you mean, no? Leila, this man is a criminal. He could be dangerous. If we call the police now, he'll know we're onto him. He might run, or worse, he might get desperate. Leila's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I need to know what he's planning to do, how he was going to steal the money, because Detective Morrison said they've done this before, which means they have a system. Elena stared at her granddaughter. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we let him make his move. Now that the money is protected, we can afford to see how far he'll go. And maybe we can help the police catch him in the act. Absolutely not. I'm not letting you put yourself in danger.
I'm already in danger, Leila pointed out. I'm married to him. I'm carrying his child. Running to the police now just means he disappears and I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when he might come back. Elena was quiet for a long moment. What did you have in mind? I act like everything is normal, maybe even act eager to get the money moved quickly. See what he does, who he contacts, how the scam works, and we document everything. That evening, Leila lay on the couch, as prescribed by her doctor, watching Marcus pace around their apartment while talking on his phone. He'd been on calls almost constantly since she'd returned from her doctor's appointment, which is what she told him about her trip to the lawyer. "No, I told you it's happening," he was saying into his phone, his voice low but not quite low enough. 3.3 total, plus the business assets. Should be liquid by the weekend. I know, but this is bigger than the Seattle job. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Leila kept her breathing even, pretending to doze, while her heart hammered against her ribs. He was talking about her inheritance like it was already his. When he finally hung up, Marcus came over and perched on the edge of the couch, running his fingers through her hair with what she now recognized as completely fake tenderness. "Hey, beautiful. How are you feeling?" "Better," she lied. "The doctor said I should be able to move around more by the weekend." "That's great news, because I've set up some meetings for us, financial planners who specialize in large portfolios. We could really make this money work for us." "Meetings, plural?" Leila kept her voice light, curious rather than suspicious. Marcus's smile was warm and convincing. "Well, you want to interview a few different firms, right? Get the best advice possible. I've got us appointments with 3 different companies, all highly recommended." Leila bet they were. "That sounds smart. Will you be handling most of it? I don't really understand investment stuff." Something predatory flashed in Marcus's eyes, gone so quickly she almost missed it. "Of course, baby. That's what husbands are for, right? I'll take care of everything." Later that night, after Marcus fell asleep, Leila crept to the bathroom and called Elena from her cell phone, speaking in whispers. "He's already set up meetings with fake financial advisors, 3 different companies, and I heard him on the phone saying the money should be liquid by the weekend, which means he thinks you're signing transfer paperwork tomorrow," Elena said grimly. "What happens when I don't? That's when we find out how dangerous he really is." The next morning brought the first test. Marcus was up early, already dressed in his best suit, when Leila emerged from the bedroom. "Hey, big day today, huh?" Checking his appearance in the hallway mirror. "Ready to secure our future?" "Actually," Leila said carefully, "Elena wants to come with us to the meetings. She said since she's been managing everything, she should be there for the transition." Marcus went very still. "Elena? I thought you'd be happy about that. She knows all the details about the accounts, the investment history. It'll make things go faster." For just a moment, Marcus's mask slipped completely. Leila saw cold calculation, frustration, and something that might have been panic. Then the charm snapped back into place. "Of course, that makes perfect sense. The more minds we have working on this, the better." But Leila could see the tension in his shoulders as he turned away, and when he thought he wasn't looking, she caught him making another phone call, his voice urgent and worried. The trap was set. Now they would see what kind of animal they'd caught.
Friday morning arrived with an unseasonable October storm that rattled the windows of their Pearl District apartment. Leila woke to find Marcus already gone, though she could smell the lingering scent of his cologne and hear the shower running in the guest bathroom. Strange, since he always used their in-suite. Her phone buzzed with a text. Had to leave early for client prep. Big day ahead. See you at the first meeting at 2 p.m. Love you both. The heart emoji at the end made her stomach turn. But when Leila tried calling Elena to confirm their plans, her grandmother's phone went straight to voicemail. She tried the office line. Same result. A cold dread began building in her chest. By noon, Leila had called 6 times with no response. Against her doctor's orders about bed rest, she grabbed her keys and drove to Elena's accounting office. The building was locked, and through the window she could see papers scattered across Elena's normally pristine desk. Her hands shaking, Leila used her spare key to let herself in. The office had been ransacked. Not violently, but systematically. File cabinets hung open, computer cables were disconnected, and Elena's safe stood ajar and empty. On Elena's desk, held down by a coffee mug, was a single sheet of paper with Elena's handwriting. Leila, if you find this, don't trust anyone. They know about the trust. Go to Patricia Brennan immediately. Hide this note. Leila's vision blurred. She sank into Elena's chair, her 8-month pregnancy making it difficult to catch her breath. Elena was gone. The files about the inheritance were gone. And somehow, Marcus's people knew about the trust. Her phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Hey, baby. His voice was honey smooth, but there was something underneath it now, something sharp. Ready for our big day? Where's Elena? Leila asked, abandoning all pretense. A pause. When Marcus spoke again, the warmth had completely drained from his voice. Elena's fine. She's just taking a little vacation, someplace where she can think clearly about what's best for everyone. What have you done? Nothing permanent yet. But Leila, sweetheart, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what you know and what you think you're going to do about it. Leila's free hand moved protectively to her belly. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of any humor. Please! Did you really think I wouldn't notice when $3 million suddenly became untouchable? Did you think I wouldn't have people watching that law office? The trap hadn't caught Marcus, it had caught Elena instead. The meetings today aren't with financial advisors. They're with people who are very interested in convincing you to reverse some recent legal decisions. And Leila, they're much less patient than I am. Let Elena go. She's an old woman. She hasn't done anything to you. She's done plenty, but here's what's going to happen. You're going to come to the Marriott downtown, room 1247, at exactly 2 p.m. You're going to bring whatever paperwork Patricia Brennan gave you about that trust, and you're going to sign whatever documents my associates present to you. And if I don't, then Elena's little vacation becomes permanent, and Leila, after that, I'll still get the money eventually. Widowers' inheritance rights are quite generous in Oregon, especially when the deceased wife dies in a tragic accident. The line went dead. Leila sat in Elena's destroyed office, her mind racing. Marcus wasn't just a con artist, he was something much more dangerous. And now Elena was paying the price for Leila's decision to play games instead of going straight to the police. She tried calling Detective Morrison in Seattle, but got voicemail. She tried Patricia Brennan, also voicemail. It was as if Marcus had anticipated every move she might make. At 1:30 p.m., Leila sat in her car outside the downtown Marriott, staring up at its gleaming facade. She'd driven there almost on autopilot, Elena's safety overriding every rational thought about her own well-being. In her purse were the trust documents Patricia had given her, the only leverage she had left. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt eternal.
When she knocked on the door of room 1247, it was answered by a woman she recognized from the Seattle investigation photos, Jennifer Moss, blonde, early 30s, with the kind of predatory beauty that probably made most people underestimate her intelligence. "Leila," she said with mock warmth, "so nice to finally meet Marcus's wife. Come in." The hotel room had been converted into a makeshift office. Marcus sat behind a desk made from the room's small table, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him in weeks. Two other men, large, silent types, flanked the windows.
"Where's Elena?" Leila demanded. "Safe," Marcus replied. "For now. Sit down." Jennifer guided Leila to a chair positioned directly across from Marcus. The setup felt deliberately intimidating, and it was working. "This doesn't have to be complicated," Marcus said, sliding a set of documents across the desk. "These papers dissolve the trust and transfer everything into a joint account that we both control. You sign them, Elena goes home, and we all move forward as one big happy family." Leila looked at the papers without touching them. "And then what? You take the money and disappear?" "Who says anything about disappearing?" Marcus's smile was sharp. "We're married, Leila. We have a baby coming. Why would I leave when I can have everything right here?" "Because you're wanted by the Seattle police for fraud." Jennifer laughed. "Those charges are going away. Amazing what $3 million can accomplish in legal fees and strategic donations." The room felt like it was closing in around Leila. She'd been so focused on protecting her money that she'd underestimated how far Marcus was willing to go. Elena was missing, possibly hurt, and Leila was trapped with criminals who had nothing left to lose. "I need proof Elena's alive," Leila said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Marcus nodded to one of his associates, who handed him a phone. After a few taps, he turned it toward Leila. A video showed Elena sitting in what looked like a warehouse, her hands zip-tied, but otherwise appearing unharmed. "As you can see, she's fine. But my friends aren't known for their patience." Marcus leaned forward. "Sign the papers, Leila." Leila's hand hovered over the pen he offered. Every instinct screamed at her not to sign. But Elena's frightened face in the video made the decision for her. She could rebuild her financial security later. She couldn't bring Elena back from the dead. Just as she was about to touch pen to paper, her phone rang. The ringtone was Elena's, the special one Leila had set up so she'd always know when her grandmother was calling. Everyone in the room froze. "That's impossible," Jennifer said, her composure cracking for the first time. "We have her phone." Marcus's face had gone pale. "Answer it." With trembling fingers, Leila accepted the call and put it on speaker. Elena's voice filled the room, strong and clear. "Leila, honey, don't sign anything. The cavalry is on the way." The sound of sirens began echoing from the street below. "You think you're the only ones who can set a trap," Elena's voice continued, and she could hear the smile in it. "I've been wearing a GPS tracker for 3 days, and every word you've said in that room has been recorded and transmitted to Detective Morrison." Marcus lunged for the documents, but it was too late. The hotel room door burst open, and Portland police officers flooded in with weapons drawn. As Marcus was forced to his knees, handcuffs clicking around his wrists, he looked up at Leila with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he snarled. But for the first time in months, Leila smiled. "Yes, it is." The aftermath of Marcus's arrest unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Detective Morrison had flown down from Seattle specifically for this operation, and he moved through the hotel room with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. "Mrs. Wellington," he said, approaching Leila as the EMTs checked her blood pressure, "I know this has been traumatic, but we're going to need a full statement. There are a lot of moving pieces to this case." Leila nodded, though her focus was entirely on getting to Elena. "My grandmother is already being transported to the hospital for evaluation," Detective Morrison assured her. She's remarkable, by the way. Most people would have panicked when they realized they were being followed. Elena called us immediately and volunteered to be bait. The revelation hit Leila like a physical blow. She knew? This whole time, she knew they were going to take her? She suspected Marcus would escalate once he realized the money was protected. So we equipped her with a tracker and a transmitter, and she led us right to their base of operations. Morrison's admiration was evident. She's the reason we were able to recover evidence linking this group to at least 6 other similar scams across the Pacific Northwest. As they rode to the hospital in the detective's car, Morrison filled in details that made Leila's head spin. Marcus and Jennifer's operation was far more sophisticated than simple marriage fraud. They targeted women in vulnerable transitions, recent divorces, deaths in the family, major life changes, and used detailed psychological profiles to craft perfect romantic personas. Marcus wasn't even his real name, born David Kellerman in Nevada. Jennifer's actually his sister, not his partner. They've been running variations of this con for 8 years. His sister? Leila felt sick. The woman he was supposedly cheating with is his sister? Part of the psychological manipulation, making you think you were competing with another woman while the real theft was happening right under your nose. At Portland General, Leila found Elena sitting up in a hospital bed looking remarkably composed for someone who'd been kidnapped 12 hours earlier. The moment Leila walked in, Elena's tough facade cracked. "Oh, honey," she said, opening her arms. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." Leila collapsed into the embrace, finally allowing herself to cry. "You scared me to death! When I saw your office, I had to make it look real. If Marcus suspected I was working with the police, the whole operation would have fallen apart." Elena pulled back to study Leila's face. "Are you hurt? Is the baby okay?" "We're fine. But, Elena, they said Marcus isn't even his real name, that the whole thing was planned from the very beginning." Elena's expression hardened. "I know. Detective Morrison showed me their files. They had a profile on you going back 2 years, Leila. They knew about your parents' accident, your isolation, your vulnerability. They targeted you specifically." The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Everything Leila had believed about her relationship, their chance meeting, their shared interests, even Marcus's supposed job troubles, was meticulously orchestrated. "I feel so stupid," Leila whispered. "You feel stupid? You're 24 years old and you just helped bring down a criminal organization that's been operating for nearly a decade. You're not stupid, honey. You're brave." Over the next 3 days, the full extent of the investigation became clear. The warehouse where Elena had been held contained detailed records of all their previous operations. David Kellerman, aka Marcus, and Jennifer had stolen over $12 million from elderly and vulnerable victims across 5 states. But the breakthrough that changed everything came when Detective Morrison arrived at Elena's hospital room with news that made all of them sit up straighter. He settled into the visitor's chair. "We found something interesting in their records. Something about your parents." Leila's blood went cold. "What about my parents?"
Morrison pulled out a file folder, his expression grim. "Your parents' car accident 16 years ago? It wasn't an accident." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Leila felt Elena's hand grip hers with surprising strength. "What are you saying?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "We found correspondence between Jennifer and a man named Robert Chen, a mechanic who tampered with your parents' brakes. He was paid $50,000 to cause what would look like an accident." Leila's vision grayed around the edges. "Someone murdered my parents?" "It gets worse," Morrison continued. "The person who paid for it was your father's business partner, Thomas Hartley. He wanted to buy out your father's share of their construction company, but your dad refused to sell. With your parents dead and you as a minor, Hartley was able to acquire the company for a fraction of its value." Elena's face had gone ashen. "The Richards Construction Company. I remember that business. It was worth millions when they died." $7.2 million to be exact. Hartley sold it 2 years later for $12 million. Morrison leaned forward. Here's where it connects to your case. Jennifer and David somehow discovered this information and were planning to use it as leverage. If you hadn't cooperated with their demands, they were going to reveal the truth about your parents' death and frame you for covering it up. The room spun around Leila. Her parents hadn't died in a random accident. They'd been murdered for money. And now, 16 years later, criminals were planning to use that murder as a weapon against her. "Where is Thomas Hartley now?" Elena's asked, her voice sharp as a blade. "Dead. Died of a heart attack 5 years ago. But his estate still holds assets that rightfully belong to your family." Morrison handed Leila another document. "With the evidence we've recovered, the DA believes you have grounds for a wrongful death lawsuit against Hartley's estate. We're talking about substantial damages, potentially $15 to $20 million. Leila stared at the papers without seeing them. 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about protecting $3 million from her criminal husband. Now she was learning that her parents had been murdered and their stolen legacy could be worth 7 times more than she'd ever imagined. "I can't process this," she said finally. "You don't have to process it all at once," Elena said firmly. "But Leila, this changes everything. Not just financially, legally. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to murder cases. We can pursue justice for your parents." Detective Morrison nodded. "The Oregon Attorney General's office wants to reopen the investigation into your parents' deaths. With the evidence Jennifer and David compiled, plus what we can recover from Hartley's records, we can build a solid case." As if summoned by the weight of the moment, Leila felt a sharp kick from the baby, stronger than any movement she'd felt before. She placed her hand on her belly, suddenly understanding something that had been eluding her. "This isn't just about the money," she said slowly. "It's about making sure the people who hurt our family are held accountable. My parents, me, this baby, we all deserve justice." Elena squeezed her hand. "Your parents would be so proud of who you've become." "They're going to be proud of who she's going to become," Detective Morrison corrected with a rare smile. "Because, Leila, with your testimony and the evidence we've recovered, we're not just taking down David and Jennifer, we're going to expose every person who participated in stealing your family's legacy." For the first time since this nightmare began, Leila felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. Not just for financial security, but for something far more valuable: the truth about her past and the power to shape her future. The breakthrough wasn't just legal or financial, it was personal. Leila Richards was no longer a victim of circumstance. She was a force to reckon with.
6 months after David Kellerman's arrest, Leila stood in the nursery of her new home in Portland's West Hills, watching her 3-month-old daughter sleep peacefully in the crib that had been her father's 16 years ago. Elena had kept it all these years, along with so many other pieces of Leila's parents that were now finding their way back into her life. The house itself was a testament to how completely everything had changed. Built in 1924 and overlooking the city, it had once belonged to Thomas Hartley, purchased with money stolen from Leila's father's construction company. The wrongful death settlement had not only returned the house to her family, but had also included punitive damages that brought the total recovery to $18 million. "She has your father's chin," Elena said softly, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of tea. At 72, Elena moved more slowly than she used to, but the ordeal with David's criminal organization seemed to have energized rather than weakened her. "And his stubborn streak, apparently," Leila replied, accepting the tea gratefully. "She refused to sleep until exactly 8:30, every night, like she's got somewhere important to be." They settled into the rocking chair by the window, Leila cradling her daughter, Maya Elena Richards. She'd reclaimed her maiden name during the divorce proceedings, a symbolic gesture that felt like the final step in erasing David Kellerman from her life. The legal proceedings had unfolded with surprising speed once the full scope of the evidence became clear. David and Jennifer faced federal charges in 5 states, with sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. The mechanic who tampered with her parents' car had died years ago, but his confession, found in Jennifer's files, had provided the closure Leila never knew she needed. "Any word from the prosecutor's office about the victim impact statements?" Elena asked. "The sentencing hearing is next month. They want me to speak about how their crimes affected not just me, but Maya's future."
Leila looked down at her sleeping daughter. I've been thinking about what to say. The truth is, Leila had been thinking about a lot more than victim impact statements. The financial settlement had given her unprecedented freedom, but it had also brought unexpected challenges. Managing $18 million was vastly different from protecting $3 million, and every financial advisor in Portland seemed eager to offer their services. I've made a decision about the money, Leila said quietly. I want to set up a foundation. Elena raised an eyebrow. What kind of foundation? For victims of financial crimes, specifically targeting cases where criminals use emotional manipulation to steal from vulnerable people. Leila had been developing this idea for weeks. We could provide legal assistance, counseling services, even emergency housing for people trying to escape situations like mine. That's a beautiful idea, honey. Your parents would love knowing their legacy was helping other families. Through the window, she could see downtown Portland spread out below them. Somewhere in that cityscape was the coffee shop where she'd first met David, the courthouse where their divorce had been finalized, and the law office where Patricia Brennan had helped her reclaim control of her life. Each location now felt like a landmark in a journey she never could have imagined taking. The foundation wasn't her only new venture. 3 weeks ago, she'd quietly purchased Elena's accounting firm and begun expanding it into a full financial planning service specializing in family wealth protection. The irony wasn't lost on her. The skills she'd learned while defending herself against David's manipulation were now helping other families safeguard their assets. Speaking of the business, Elena said, as if reading her thoughts, that young lawyer Patricia recommended starts Monday. Sarah Chen. She's got excellent credentials in estate planning. Dr. Chen's daughter? Asked Leila, referring to the doctor who treated her during her pregnancy complications. The very same. Turns out fighting financial crimes runs in families. Elena smiled. She's particularly interested in cases involving elder fraud. Says her grandmother was targeted by a similar scheme in California. Maya stirred in her sleep, making the soft sounds that meant she'd be awake soon. Leila marveled at how quickly she had adapted to reading her daughter's cues, to structuring her life around someone else's needs. 6 months ago, she'd felt helpless and manipulated. Now she was making decisions that would affect multiple families for generations to come. There's something else, Leila said quietly, setting down her teacup. Detective Morrison called yesterday. They've identified 3 more victims from David's files, women who were targeted but never approached. The FBI wants me to contact them, help them understand what they escaped. Are you ready for that? Leila considered the question carefully. Was she ready to relive her experience with David, to help other women understand the sophisticated psychological manipulation they unknowingly avoided? A year ago, the answer would have been no, but motherhood had changed her perspective on nearly everything.
I think I have to be ready, she said finally. These women deserve to know what almost happened to them. And if sharing my story prevents even one person from going through what I did... Elena nodded approvingly. Your mother used to say that sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the best things we can do for others. As if summoned by the mention of doing good for others, Maya opened her eyes and fixed her gaze on Leila with the intense focus that babies bring to studying their mother's faces. In those dark eyes, Leila saw echoes of her father's intelligence and her mother's determination, but also something entirely new, a sense of possibility unconstrained by past trauma. You know what the strangest part is? Leila said, lifting Maya from the crib. I'm grateful. Grateful? If David had never targeted me, we might never have discovered the truth about my parents. The people responsible for their deaths would have gotten away with it forever, and all those other victims would still be waiting for justice. Elena's eyes filled with tears. That's very wise, honey. Or maybe it's just easier to find meaning in trauma when you're sitting in an $18 million house holding a healthy baby. Leila laughed, but there was truth in her words too. Either way, I'm not the same person who fell for David's lies. I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of. Outside, the October sun was setting over Portland, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Leila of the sunset on her wedding day,
a day that now felt like it had happened to someone else entirely. In some ways it had. The naive young woman who'd believed in fairy tales had been replaced by someone far more complex, a mother, a businesswoman, a survivor who'd chosen to channel her experience into protecting others. Maya made a soft cooing sound, and Leila realized her daughter was smiling. Not the reflexive smiles of early infancy, but a real expression of contentment and joy. "See that, Maya?" Leila whispered, walking to the window where they could both see the city lights beginning to twinkle in the growing darkness. "That's our world down there, and we're going to make it a little bit safer for families like ours." In the reflection of the window glass, Leila could see Elena watching them both with an expression of fierce pride and protective love. 3 generations of Richards women, each scarred by loss, but strengthened by survival, each committed to ensuring that their family's story would ultimately be one of justice rather than victimhood. The fairy tale hadn't ended with a wedding and a prince. It had ended with something far more valuable: the knowledge that Leila Richards could rescue herself, protect her daughter, and build a legacy worthy of the parents she'd finally learned to honor properly. And that, Leila thought, as Maya drifted back to sleep in her arms, was a much better ending than any fairy tale could have provided.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.